First, let's talk about where they're located. All right. In the mountains of Ethiopia is a group of Ethiopians that have celebrated their Jewish heritage for centuries. Actually, it's been about 15 to 1800 years. All right. 15 to 1800 years. Now, that's not when they started. That's just when they started in that area because they migrated, which we'll talk about in a little bit. All right. All Jews have been migrating. They've been migrating literally nonstop since about maybe 2,000 years ago. All right, around the time of Moses, actually, sorry, 4,000 years ago. 4,000 years, not 2,000. 4,000 years ago. And so Ethiopian Jews living in a remote mountainous region of northwestern Ethiopia, which is an area which until recently could be reached only on foot or on horseback. So this is a key clue to why hardly anybody knows about these people. Okay. Until recently, you have to go on this like journey, like this real rural journey to get to these people. You have to go for like an Australian Aboriginal, call it a walkabout, to get very difficult to get to them. All right. Black Jews who call themselves the Kaila or the Beta Israel, the house of Israel is really what it means. Okay. They observe the Sabbath as indicated in the Torah. They eat only kosher food. They pray in straw-roofed synagogues. And they use only unleavened bread during the 7 days of Passover. Yet they also offer animals in sacrifice and have priests and deacons appointed by the community, and their neighbors call them falashas, which means strangers, wanderers, or exiles. All right. So they follow, as you can see, the majority of the Jewry, the rules of being an Orthodox Jew. However, they don't have the Talmud. Now, that's really important because the Talmud came way later, which to me proves that the other Jews that are reading from the Talmud are most likely the Talmud was something that was written and added much later. And then when the Ethiopian Jews migrated down to where they are in Ethiopia out of Egypt, they were cut off from getting access to that Talmud information and never had a chance to learn the Talmud. But everything else that they do is pretty much the same, to be quite honest with you, proving that they are actual authentic Jews, which has now been authenticated by Israelis. These are some pictures of some Ethiopian Jews right here. All right, you can see the Star of David behind them. Here's another Beta Israel Jewish family. It looks like they're on a bus, probably on their way to somewhere, but you can see that they're all together here, looking, pretty modern. This is a modern day thing. These people are well known. These Jews are well known, and they travel around. They just have regular lives, just like everyone else. Just except that they're from Ethiopia. So these are chief rabbis of both the Ashkenazi and the Sephardic Jews recognize the indigenous Ethiopians as members of the Agnau ethnic group as authentic Jews. So they have been recognized as authentic Jews by chief rabbis of both the Ashkenazi and the Sephardic Jews. All right. Sephardic Jews primarily hail from Turkey and that region, Iraq. Ashkenazi are more European. And, the thing about this whole thing really is just based on my research, it looks like a lot of the information was taken directly out of Egypt, which we'll get into a little bit later, really soon, actually. But it just seems like a lot of the information was taken out of Egypt. Or the tribes formed and then moved through Egypt and then spreading from there. So, of course, the biblical narrative of Jews as slaves building pyramids just didn't happen, guys. I'm sorry, just didn't happen. When you really go to Egypt, like I've been many times, you find out that there were no Jews there working, doing hard labor as slaves and building these things, because the records have been left behind by the construction people who worked on these sites. And you find out that they had payment. They were paid a salary every single week. they had a form of health insurance in ancient times. And you can see the records of people claiming for like broken legs and broken arms and injuries and injured backs. All these records are available to the general public and are well documented, and they really do exist. There's another story that really tells the truth about how people came together, formed a monotheistic religion, and then fled from Egypt, which I'm going to get into tonight. All right. But these are the three races, as you can tell them apart by this. I saw somebody in the chat. How can you tell them apart? You have the Agnau ethnic group, which is the Ethiopian Jews. The Sephardic Jews are also out of Turkey, but also some in Spain and even into Asia as well. All right. And then you have the Ashkenazi Jews. Ethiopian Jews' origins can be traced to the Exodus from Egypt. A band of Hebrews headed south rather than across the Sinai Desert, ending up in Ethiopia, so in the land of Moses. Now, we're going to get into this Moses story a little bit. And here's where I'm going to give you some of my own conjecture, some of my own hypothesis as to what I believe happened with the Moses story, because the actual person, Moses, I believe is actually Pharaoh Akhenaten, a former Pharaoh Akhenaten, who was actually ousted out of Egypt and took followers with him. All right. Moses was quite possibly the outcasted Pharaoh Akhenaten. Numbers 12:1 in the King James Bible. Then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. And so, basically Moses, he left out of Egypt. And I'm going to tell you, I think, in my opinion, it was actually Pharaoh Akhenaten is actually Moses. I mean, we all know that the name Moses didn't really exist back then. That's a made up name. Obviously, there's no Paul, Peter, and all these kind of names. I mean, come on, wake up. Those names are all fabricated names. However, there are people associated to those names, but the actual names are something else. I mean, there's nobody in Middle East called Mary. Okay, it's just not going to happen. All right. However, Akhenaten is an interesting character in ancient Egypt in that he actually decided to start following Amun-Ra, aka Marduk, who can be found in the Torah, the Jewish American Virtual Library, and everywhere else in the Bible. Right. And so Marduk is Amun-Ra, and Amun-Ra is a jealous god, and there'll be no other gods but him. That made it into the actual Bible, hit that text that he said there. He was also known as Aten, the sun disk, because he, instead of walking amongst men on the ground, he liked to rule from the sky in his ship. And then Akhenaten called it the sun disk. Okay. And anyway, any rate, Akhenaten was now convinced that this was the one God that he was going to worship, and under the rule and under the guidance of this Anunnaki named Marduk, aka Amun-Ra, he was going to usher in monotheism to the world through Pharaoh Akhenaten, because he wanted everybody to think that he was the one and only true God that existed, and to forget all of his relatives, because you had Yahweh, who was also known as Enlil. You had Ea Enki, who was another one of the gods. You had Anu, who was the head god. You had all these gods walking around on Earth in different places on the planet at any given time. And this guy, Marduk, who was actually related to them, became very jealous, according to the Sumerian tablets, and wanted to be the only one getting worshipped. He wanted to be the king of the planet so bad, he started a war to take over kingship before his anointed time, which he did. Okay, so this is a brutal guy. This guy's actually crazy, all right, in my personal opinion. And I'm getting this information directly from Sumerian tablets. Now,
by Compendium of the Emerald Tablets by Billy Carson.